Tales from Ilgraya presents The Once and Future Crown, a short story by KSA10.
I groaned as I stepped through the front door of my house into the sitting room. The door clapped shut behind me as I kicked off my boots and cast my gaze about. The room, which you had to step down into, was unusually cluttered, a sure sign of the move which was in process. Rubbing my aching shoulders, I looked around at the familiar chaos. Empty boxes leaned against the back of the pit couch, all bearing the scrawled writing of my best friend and temporary housemate, Ash, the daughter of the Witch Queen, who presided over the portal coven my family and I were part of. Looking at the signs of change, I let out a weary sigh. A lot had happened in the last 6 Lumiere. My adopted parents, Tony and Infineon, had decided that Roland and I were grown enough to warrant expanding to a second nest location. As a result, my brother and I had shared this house for the past 2 Lumiere, but Roland had recently moved out to live with Misha, the portal dragon. At 14 turns, or 144 Terran years old, I was still considered a child in Ilgrayan society, as was Roland at 50 turns. Given our species' near immortal nature, maturity wasn't reached until 300 turns, making our parents' disapproval of Roland's living arrangement with Misha hardly surprising. Moving stiffly past the couch, I made my way through a small hall into the kitchen. The clutter continued into this room as well. There were a few boxes by the sink, one of which was opened, revealing pink hand towels. The table had multiple plates with half-eaten food, and there was a cup of coffee sitting on the counter. The steam was a sure sign someone else was indeed in the house. Sitting my keys on the counter, I looked at the plates in the sink and sighed before making my way into the hall, which led back to the bedrooms. I could hear soft voices from the hall. It sounded as though Ash and her sister were currently having a spirited discussion. Following the Witch Queen's prolonged absences from the Covenstead, her eldest daughter, Tasha, made an emergency appeal to the Ilgrayan authorities. The courts awarded temporary custody of both Tasha and Ashlyn to their grandparents, resulting in Ash staying with me in the nest, under my adoptive parents' protection, until her grandparents were ready to receive them both.
No!
Ash's voice sounded from ahead of me.
Put that one on a hanger.
You were gonna hang diamond silk like a common Terran t-shirt?
Tasha's voice responded, tinged with disgust.
It is going to have to hang like that until Dalian gets my proper wardrobe moved in here.
Are you all settled in? I asked Ash, leaning against the doorframe to her room.
I'm getting there.
Ash replied, looking from me to her remaining boxes.
I mean, there's probably a few hours left of unpacking to do.
You just missed Tony and Infineon.
Tasha said, pulling a beautiful green dress out of a box.
If you tell me you want this on a hanger, I will take it with me to be properly stored. Grandfather would lose it if he knew you were using Terran clothing storage.
Their new nest is coming along nicely.
Ash stood up and walked over to her sister.
Until Dalian gets my wardrobe over here, let's just say my clothing storage options are limited.
Ash, I said thoughtfully, looking at the dress. Rolly left a stasis chest downstairs. You could always use it until yours is delivered. Hope lit up in Ash's eyes, and Tasha smiled. I looked at the boxes and sighed, knowing the pain of having your life uprooted by less than stellar parents. It was a familiar story, like the one that had brought me here in the first place. To say some people shouldn't be parents was putting it mildly. Right. Well, Chloe put me through it today and I'm kind of tired, I said with a yawn. I'm going to go lay down for a bit.
Okay.
Ash replied. A look of concern crossed her face before she returned her attention to the box she was unpacking.
We should just take these 2 boxes downstairs then.
Would be better than disrespecting your clothing like a common Terran.
If you need me, you know where I'll be. I walked out into the hall and crossed the short distance to my room, pushing open the door and stepping inside. I shut it behind me and made my way over to the bedside table. A strange artifact sat on the table. A crystalline skull with whirling galaxies that filled its orbitals as if they were eyes, which followed me as I made my way to the bed. A chill trickled down my spine as I reached over and turned the skull to face the wall. This skull was found while I was in the Amazon rainforest investigating an unsanctioned portal which had spontaneously opened. Its rainbowed surface gleamed even without light, and it could talk. Or at the very least, it was capable of projecting its thoughts directly to me. I'd certainly learned a lot in the 4 Lumiere since bringing the skull home. It was a treasure trove of interesting information, but my bestial essence seethed at its presence.
Bury that accursed thing in a deep hole.
My bestial essence growled as I turned down my covers and crawled into bed. Look, I am going to outfit Roland's old room to hold it. I projected back to the beast. I still need a little time to prepare the necessary rituals.
Whatever.
My beast snorted at me.
Don't say I didn't warn you.
Curling into a ball, I stared at the back of the oddly luminous skull. It was eerily beautiful as my vision lost focus, and the darkness of the room slowly swallowed me. The fatigue and aches I felt from the exertion of my session with Queen Regent Chloe gave way to exhaustion. As the tides of sleep rolled over me, I followed them deep.
Tales.
Sweet dreams, Zeranfachi.
The foggy-edged world of the Dreamtime formed seamlessly, revealing three figures as they rushed through a frozen stand of conifer trees. There were two adults and a rather small child. The child, tiny and ragged, stumbled and staggered as they struggled to keep up. Their efforts felt futile as they attempted to weave through or around frozen, leafless, thorny bushes, small trees and snowdrifts. The shorter, more slightly built adult of the group would periodically slow their stride, sometimes to a stop as they waited for the child to catch up. The taller adult's voice came in an unexpectedly high mixture between a purr and a squawk, as they spoke a language the child had never heard before. The waving of their hands towards the distance went unnoticed by their companions.
Fini.
The other adult replied in a chiding alto voice as she came to a stop.
Parente obvious. Velanigep.
Oh.
The taller figure let out a small frosty huff and came to a stop as they looked back at their companions. The other adult was currently disentangling the wide-eyed, shivering child from the same thorn bush Finney had been tall enough to step over. Despite being cut up and bleeding, the haggard child didn't so much as whimper when multiple inch-long thorns were removed from their skin. The tattered remnants of clothing clung to their frail body, threadbare and frayed to wisps that danced in the biting wind. Every gust revealed their long-neglected skin, ashen and wind-burned, a haunting testament to their suffering. Their tiny feet, bare and bleeding, told a tale of desperate attempts to keep pace over the frozen, jagged terrain.
Tony.
Finney's face softened and they pulled off their rich, reddish-brown cloak and handed it over to their mate. This left Finney in a pair of black high-waist trousers, a white button-down shirt and suspenders. They weren't exactly dressed for wading through the aftermath of a blizzard. But given the fact that they were a phoenix, the cold wasn't really an issue. The shorter, cloak-clad figure wrapped the cloth around the child and scooped the small, trembling body up. In the process of being lifted, the child made their first noise, a small, fearful eep as they clutched the cloak, holding it closed from the inside with their aching fingers. The soft, yet urgent tones of the adults was not something they were accustomed to. Finney said, opening their arms to receive the child. The trembling child weighed so little it was alarming to the phoenix. Tony asked anxiously, looking between the child and her mate. The phoenix remarked on the thin, unkept nature of the child and gently cradled them in the cloak they had just been compared to. With tiny passenger in hand, the phoenix turned and started making their way through the forest once more. The cloak-clad female said, as they moved through the snow-laden forest. The notion of this tiny child surviving alone for an entire Terran year was deeply unsettling to both adults. No wonder they were in such a sorry state. They'd likely endured 2 harsh winters without shelter or proper care. The child's eyes were fixed on the creature holding them, their wonder silencing their voice once more. The adult's words flowed like a soothing melody, a song that seemed to dance on the air. Though they couldn't decipher the meaning, the gestures and glances directed their way made it clear they were the subject of conversation. Their green eyes, soft and curious, lingered on the clawed hand resting on their chest, its odd, bony structure evoking the sleek lines of an animal's paw. A sight that would have unnerved most Terran humans, but thankfully for all involved, this child's heritage lay far beyond the ordinary. The hand had 3 fingers and what seemed to be a thumb. Each coppery finger was tipped with a wicked-looking black talon. The way the moonlight gleamed off of the claws was comfortingly familiar to the small child. The creature donned a guarded expression, which softened as a small, curious hand snuck out of the edge of the cloak to lightly wrap around one of the bony digits. The clawed hand relaxed a bit, allowing the thin, nearly blue, blunt-tipped fingers of the child to grab hold. The thumb claw of the hand began gently tracing circles on the back of the child's tiny hand. The child let out a soft, nearly imperceptible sigh at the contact. The hesitant, slightly fearful gaze of the child drifted up to the face of the creature who was carrying them. As if caught staring for too long, the creature looked away. Moonbeams danced across their face, causing some orangish-red scales to glitter by their eyes. The warm, earthy tone stood in hypnotic contrast with the yellowish-blue moonlit sclera, which marked the creature as nocturnal. Despite the creature's considerable height and pointed features, it was hard to tell if they were male or female, not that the child cared. This tall, seemingly earless, elegant-faced creature was soft-spoken and had a gentle disposition. The child had nearly forgotten the comfort of being seen and assisted, not scorned, for being too small and weak. For better or worse, being unable to make their words didn't bother the child. A strong gust of wind blew, rustling the trees, knocking snow from the boughs. The child groaned softly and buried their wind-chapped face into the warm chest of the creature who was carrying them. The heat was soothing to the point that the child relaxed, almost drifting off to sleep. Only the occasional bite of wind at their scratched-up neck kept them awake. As the adults quickened their pace, the tiny child's world narrowed to the rhythmic thud of the creature's dual heartbeats and the crunch of iced snow beneath their steady strides. Eventually, the forest gave way to an open field, atop a seaside cliff. Up above in the sky, the northern lights danced, illuminating the mostly empty, snow-laden field. A deep, rumbling voice caused the child to jolt and anxiously look for the source. Twin sentinels of ancient stony wood stood at the precipice of a seaside cliff, their boughs intertwined in a mystical dance, forming an archway of living wood. Beneath this natural portal, a lone figure stood, a woman of statuesque beauty, her presence a gentle whisper of power. Despite the snow being whipped up by the blustery winds, the tall, curvy creature stood unblinkingly in a soft pink, short-sleeved tunic and white leggings. Her predatory eyes gleamed like precious stones and glittered from pink to white as she moved. She was completely bald, and the skin on her face, head, and neck had scales which shimmered from metallic pink to silvery white and back in the moonlight.
Misha.
Tony called out in greeting.
Antonia.
Misha inclined her head slightly, returning the gesture as she looked at the child being carried by the phoenix.
Infinion tutti hetas?
Belani buvoir. Chanik redis prujaden.
Tony replied.
Joves chanik segande.
The dragon nodded in understanding. Many of the fair-race children of Terra who were orphaned were like this, quiet until they decided if they could trust you.
No waking up yet. Zeren Fachi, there is more fun to be had.
Chani? Boer gnuciar pruyadel hues meze terantiang?
Misha looked at the small bundled child for a moment. The child was looking back and forth between Tony and the newcomer with open suspicion. The child could understand nothing of the conversation, save for the tone of the words.
Zeran Fachi schreit kan je prom.
There was affection in Misha's low rumble of a voice as she smiled. The child looked between all of the adults with confusion written plainly on their face. The person holding them gently patted their back and continued conversing in the funny language.
Nil solitaire tol silate.
Infinian observed the portal rather casually, motioning to it.
Chi.
Misha nodded, looking away from the child she had just affectionately nicknamed Little Star in Nalculian.
Moroini penas delir heze pribis tertol zemat kio.
Yongwaik.
The phoenix replied softly, stroking the matted hair which covered the back of the child's head. An unsettlingly familiar energy began to build in the air. A look of recognition dawned on the child's face and they began to whimper softly. The phoenix looked down at the child who was now shuddering in their arms. That tiny, dirt and blood-smudged face was watching transfixed as the woman began to twitch and contort. Those innocently green eyes went wide with fear as the woman's body doubled in size multiple times over. Ballooning with an otherworldly rapidity, Misha's fair guise began to slip as a scalding torrent of viscous fluid rolled off of her, melting the nearby snow. The child let out an anxious groan as they stared, slack-jawed at the scene before them. Being a nutritor, the child had seen something similar before with their lycanthrope birth parents. A terrified expression painted itself on their face, and they sank as deep into the arms which were holding them as they possibly could. Shh! Infinian breathed out softly, cradling the child against their body.
Misha is a friend.
The phoenix whispered in Terran English next to the child's ear. Friend? The child looked up at the phoenix like they had 10 heads. In the child's experience, a shifting lichen who wasn't related to them was a danger, especially since they were a nutritor. It only took contact with a wound or a scratch which barely broke the skin to cause a nutritor to awaken their dormant lichen heritage. As such, the child was now fully trembling in Infinian's arms. Misha's skin began steaming as it stretched and ripped, revealing a ripple of metallic pinkish-white scales. The child covered their nose and let out a gagging cough. There was an awful stench on the air, which seemed to be a mixture of ozone and charred flesh. The child's face etched in horrified fascination as the once humanoid face deformed, becoming bony and lizard-like. As far as the child knew, lycanthropes didn't come in a lizard variety. The hands grew long and bony as black claws burst forth from the nail beds. The child cringed, huddling back against Infinian. The world became awash with the ghastly symphony of cracking bones and ripping flesh, which seemed to stretch on forever. Despite what must have been utter agony, Misha's face was etched into a mask of serenity, which hid the suffering, as she grew into a massive dragon. The child watched with a detached fascination, much like one might observe a train crash through a wooden buggy with. After several deep breaths, Misha turned from the trio and made her way over to the trees. The child couldn't help their fearful fascination as they watched how the dragon's throat started to glow a vibrant, nearly neon pink. Opening her mouth, the dragon unleashed a torrent of tiny, frothy bubbles upon the trees. The whitish-pink, bubbly slime slowly rolled down the empty branches, giving the temporary illusion of frosted, glittering foliage, before it began to drip and ooze to form a shining film over and across the arch-like gap between the trunks of the two trees. A pinkish-white swirl of shimmering, bubbly film whirled from the center of the archway until it expanded to fill the space entirely.
Come along.
The dragon inclined her head towards the newly activated portal as her large, whip-like tail twitched. She was speaking in the Terran language known as English for the benefit of the child.
It won't stay open long.
Tony and Infinian rushed through the shimmering archway. The child looked around in fascination as they were carried through the shining, film-like surface of what was essentially a giant bubble. There was a static discharge of resistance as the nearly invisible surface of energy, which divided all the realms, deformed before recognizing its sentinel and letting the small group through. The child blinked their glowing eyes, positively mesmerized as the northern lights disappeared, leaving a glittering starfield in their wake. The shimmering carpet of stars was perhaps more enthralling than the aurora had been. There were shades of pinks, oranges, purples, and inky, nearly black blues, which formed distant clouds amongst the celestial objects beyond the sky.
Infinian, I am under orders to carry the little crown.
Misha once again spoke in Terran English as she settled her body low so the spot where her neck met her shoulders was reachable. Unwrapping the child from the cloak, Infinian tried to sit them astride Misha's neck. The child let out a panicked sound and flung their arms around the phoenix's neck.
Misha is a friend.
Tony affirmed softly, reaching up to stroke the child's arm. Wide, distrustful eyes looked at the quasi-familiar stranger. The child looked at the dragon and nearly choked with panic before looking back at the cloaked woman to shake their little head as they let out a whimper of protest. Several minutes passed like this before Misha assisted. Shifting her long whip-like tail, she wrapped the appendage around the trio and lifted the tip high above the group to playfully dangle it near the child. The wiggling worm-like lure at the end of the tail illuminated softly, drawing the child's attention. Their fear eased, first into confusion, then fascination as they watched the iridescent glow shift from white to pink. They released their grip on Infinian and reached for the lure, much like a kitten batting at string. Misha let out a low, rumbling chuckle, allowing the child to catch the lure. With the child distracted, the phoenix gently moved to place them astride the dragon. The child instantly released the shiny, worm-like lure. Anxious eyes darted around as the lure left their view. The realization that they were sitting on the dragon registered as they nervously looked down. After a few seconds, tiny, trembling hands found purchase on the dragon's neck spikes. Tucking in her wings, Misha used them to support the child, like the back of a chair. Once the child was settled, the phoenix wrapped the cloak around their tiny form, allowing the excess to drape down both sides of the dragon's neck. Turning their back to the dragon, Infinian's movements became a gently flowing dance as they divulged themselves of unnecessary garments. The air was caressed with the soft whisper of fabric as the garments were gently folded and handed over to Tony. A richly sweet, earthy scent filled the air with the aroma of autumn's final bloom as Infinian's body began to ripple and shift its form. The tall humanoid stretched, its skin undulated and deformed before it suddenly ripped open, revealing wet brown feathers. Standing just a little over half Misha's height, the phoenix had a toothy snout instead of the beak one might typically associate with a bird. The child's concerned look became one of fascination as they watched the phoenix preen the gunk from their feathers. The creature's body plumage was a mixture of reds and browns, which displayed a faint striped pattern. The clawed arms had long feathers with bands of red and copper to match the crest of feathers on their head.
We will make the best time if your witch rides you. We will already be attracting attention by using this portal. Best not to have any stragglers.
The dragon said, looking from the phoenix to Tony, who was stuffing the folded clothing into a leather bag. Without a word, the phoenix moved over to present their back to their mate. Grabbing a fistful of feathers, Tony swung astride the horse-sized creature's back.
Hold tight, Ziranfachi.
The dragon rumbled softly as she rose from the ground. The dragon's first few strides saw the wide-eyed child clinging to the neck spikes for dear life. It was only after they had been in motion for quite some time that the tiny youngling began to relax their grip and lean back against the wings, using them for support. After growing comfortable astride the massive beast, their gaze drifted. Up above, the sky glittered with a rich, inky blanket of stars. The surface was covered in a pattern, the fabric of which seemed to have a soft, loamy, cloud-like structure snaking across it. It was mesmerizing to behold, with edges that faintly glowed a mixture of lilac, white, pink, and coral hues. The child had never seen a night sky such as this. It was breathtaking in its haunting splendor. The dragon lifted her head. Her throat glowed bright pink before her head pitched back and her shining lips parted, revealing a menacing flash of glittering razor blade-like teeth. A cluster of pinkish-white bubbles rose into the sky, seeming to drift on a non-existent wind. Misha set to following the nearly imperceptible path, which was marked by the soft, glowing orbs of her bubbles. Each time the small group moved past a bubble, it would burst, releasing a small flash similar to a firework before fading and leaving the area behind obscured by darkness. Given the lack of a visible moon, the darkened land around the group seemed flat, as far as the child could see. Still, they felt the uneasy sensation of being watched. This unease caused the child to look around anxiously. The dragon turned to the right, and in the distance, strange shapes appeared at odd angles all around. Some even seemed to be floating in the sky. As the group approached, the path ahead seemed to narrow, funneling them in one direction as the distant shapes began to clearly take form. The child couldn't help their wide-eyed stare. There were floating doors and random, oddly angled staircases which seemed to wrap around the group. The sky and horizon were now mostly obscured by swirling tunnels of doors and stairs which formed snaking hallways that branched off from the path the group was on. These fantastical hallways seemed to the child to open quickly, forming and disappearing faster than the blink of an eye in some cases. The sound of doors opening and closing made the child's eyes flit back and forth, while their neck hair stood on end. Every door had a different shape, color, frame, and knob. It was like a kaleidoscope. Some would only appear for a split second. Most were closed, but the child couldn't shake the uneasy feeling of being watched. Given that the child was riding on a literal dragon, they shouldn't be this afraid, yet they were nearly ready to scream. Up ahead in the distance, a staircase spiraled straight up and was topped with a faintly gleaming door. As the group approached, it became clear that the staircase was overgrown with long trailing mosses and ivy. Whatever materials the steps were comprised of was not visible. The stairs were not traversable. Chills raced up and down the child's spine as their eyes drifted up to the shining door at the top of the spiral staircase. The door looked like it was a solid chunk of stone. The child's head spun and the hairs on their arms and neck raised. There was something unsettlingly familiar about the rainbow sheen of that door. They looked down at the dragon. If she was bothered by the creepy door, it didn't show. The group made its way past the staircase, pivoting around it before eventually leaving it far behind. Leaving the staircase behind did little to ease the child's discomfort. Their head was now basically on a swivel as they attempted to look at every door they passed. Due to the sheer number and the fact that some doors only manifested for a few seconds at most, this was impossible. But it kept the child occupied and allowed the group to make progress through the maze which was Amsadra. The bizarre quartet passed under a door, and the child could swear they saw unsettling, galaxy-like eyes peeking down at them. This caused them to whimper softly and look down at the dragon. The creature appeared unbothered or unaware of the eyes which were just watching the group. Their attention was fixed on following the tiny glowing bubble trail through the maze of doors and stairways. Misha turned and the group found themselves approaching an astronomically large, all-white stairway which seemed to be formed of loamy clouds. The large staircase seemed to rise, plateauing at a landing where it turned and continued up, disappearing into a cloud bank. There were glowing bubbles floating about every third step up the visible part of the staircase. The group approached and the child stared wide-eyed. Each step was higher than an adult was tall, yet the dragon and phoenix ferried their passengers up each step with relative ease. Each step the great beast took released little foggy swirls of white mist, making it dance in the air. Misha and her tiny passenger were partway to the landing for the massive staircase when the child began to tremble and grip the spikes of her neck. Up above the duo, on what seemed to be the ceiling, the glowing tip of the dragon's tail was visible. Behind the tail, the phoenix looked up at the duo in bemusement.
How?
The child's voice came out as a terrified whisper as they looked down.
This is a liminal space.
The dragon responded calmly in Terran.
Things like gravity work differently here.
Liminal?
The child tested the unfamiliar word as they looked between the phoenix and the dragon.
Are they on the ceiling with your tail?
They may be.
The dragon gave a small chuckle.
Or they could be on the floor.
If we are on the ceiling, then why am I not falling?
Magica il Belani?
Tony responded as the phoenix carried her up alongside Misha.
Belani?
It means little child.
The phoenix translated into Terran from beside the duo.
What are you, a dinosaur?
A what?
The phoenix looked at the child, tilting their head as they spoke.
Teran Belani, Yoke Oyantak dinosaur?
Misha addressed in Finnian.
Magic did this?
This realm is made up of magic and dreams.
Tony said, pitching her head back to look up at the child.
Tell me, Zeran Fashi.
The dragon rumbled softly.
Now that you are warm enough to talk, what is your name?
Zeranfachi?
The child arched a confused brow.
In Alkilium, it means little star.
Misha rumbled.
Oh, is Nalkulian your language?
The child asked.
One of our many tongues.
The dragon responded gently.
May we have your name?
The child looked amongst the odd group with a nervous glint in their eyes. The group may have helped so far, but the child still didn't know if they could fully trust these adults. They chewed on their bottom lip and picked their nails.
Well?
Tony questioned softly.
Eh.
The child responded after a few moments of hesitant silence.
Call me Sasha.
Sasha.
The phoenix cooed.
Nice to be properly acquainted.
Who are all of you?
Sasha asked, looking first down at the feathered, dinosaur-looking creature, then at the head of the creature they were riding on.
What are you?
I am Misha.
The creature Sasha was riding rumbled.
Okay.
The child shifted their weight to look down at their other companions.
I am Tony.
The woman in the cloak said, looking back at Sasha.
I am an elven witch, and this...
She reached up to gently caress the feathered neck of the creature carrying her.
Is my bonded in Finnian? They are a phoenix.
Where are we going?
Sasha asked, looking around the 3D maze of stairs, doors, and meandering halls.
Well...
The dragon raised her head to the distance, motioning over the edge of the landing with a nod.
See that massive spire out there?
Sasha squinted as they looked ahead. Out past the end of the spiraling doors and staircases to nowhere, rising like a distant shimmering mirage, was what seemed to be a massive spire which stretched up into the cloudless sky.
I think so?
That is the trunk of Ilgraya.
What's Ilgraya?
Well, Ilgraya is...
Misha paused and lapsed into a brief, thoughtful silence as she struggled to convey her understanding in simple enough Terran terms for a nestling to understand.
It's the spot where all of the dimensions meet.
Huh?
The child blinked in confusion at the big word.
You will understand in time.
The dragon went on to explain in a soft rumble.
Inside of there is something called the Tower Squad.
Tower Squad?
Sasha blinked as they looked at the distant spire.
They have a division to help keep the runaways and orphans of the community safe.
Oh.
Sasha fell into silence once more. The group began moving again, continuing to climb the loamy stairs. Eventually, they came to a plateau and began following the bubbles through another meandering field of doors. The keen eyes of the youngster glanced about. As they moved, Sasha swore they could see one or two of the doors crack open. First a red one with a silver handle, then a grey, rusty-looking door. That uneasy sensation of being watched filled them, causing them to shift and look around nervously.
What seems to be the problem, Zeranfachi?
Misha rumbled softly in response to feeling their tiny passenger's movements.
Are we the only ones here?
Sorsha asked, looking around.
Well,
The dragon rumbled, glancing about thoughtfully.
there are other portal dragons guiding passengers through the lanes, though none of them should be near this sector. There are the Star Elves and the Throne of Ilgraya who can access and use the lanes at will. Then there are the creatures which have evolved to live in and hunt the worm lanes.
There are creatures that can hunt us here?
Yes and no.
Misha gave out a chortle.
They wouldn't dare approach me. They are only a risk to stragglers who stray from their group and creatures that sneak in without a guide.
Sorsha glanced up at the iron-looking door as the dragon turned and seemed to pivot around it.
Oh. Could those things be watching us?
Naturally.
The phoenix cooed from beside the dragon.
We entered the lanes through an unusual temporary portal. I suspect everything, including the throne at the heart of Ilgraya, is watching.
Throne?
Sorsha quirked a questioning brow.
Are you saying a chair can watch us?
This isn't just any chair.
Misha's voice trembled in amusement as she responded. The group made 2 more turns before climbing up a set of stairs, at the top of which was a jagged archway that almost looked as though it was blown from glass. As they glided through the archway, the tiniest member of the group let out a gasp. Up above, floating in the sky, was a massive, nearly full moon. The ground ahead evened out, spreading into a wide, flat expanse of what appeared to be either sand, salt, or dirt. The gritty ground sparkled in the moonlight, glittering hypnotically as the party moved across it at a rather rapid pace. The moon itself seemed to be glittering as it slowly changed colors. The sheen of pigment was subtle yet constantly shifting as it drifted across the celestial body, turning it from white to soft pink, purple, blue, and green. The shades of the rainbow, which wafted across the surface, danced and swirled as the group moved. It was mesmerizing to the little Sasha. There were less floating doors here, and the ones that were in this area all looked more like the doors from a dungeon than the more modern styles Sorsha was accustomed to.
Why do they look so funny?
Sorsha asked.
Pardon?
Misha rumbled quizzically at her tiny passenger.
The doors. They all look funny. Why?
They are very old.
The phoenix responded, chortling softly in its parrot-like voice.
Are they older than you?
Sorsha asked, and the group erupted in laughter.
They're older than all of us combined.
The phoenix chortled as they responded.
Oh, well, then why does the moon look funny?
Sorsha asked, pointing towards the sky.
Because we are walking on a salt flat.
Tony answered this time.
As the salt crumbles underfoot, it releases vapors.
Really? What kind of vapors would make the moon a rainbow?
Sasha asked, eyes still glued to the moon.
The vapors which come from soul salt, dearie.
Tony responded once more.
Soul salt?
The youngling raised an eyebrow, casting their gaze out across the darkened plain.
It is a byproduct of life and death.
The dragon responded.
That salt is the tiny particles which are shaved away when the bond between a soul and its host body breaks down.
Oh.
Sorsha lapsed back into silence, staring at the ever-changing landscape around them. Ahead in the distance, the moon seemed to be illuminating a glittering path. It seemed to twist and turn throughout the barren landscape, almost as if it were intentionally guiding the party towards the spire. Sasha was unsure of how much time had lapsed since the party had first entered this space. There was no real way for the child to make such a determination. The moon, up above, seemed to be static, as if it were permanently fixed to its spot in the distance. There were no clouds to obscure the sky, so the group cast large shadows across the swirling rainbows of salt vapor. The only time their shadows shifted was when the group turned their trajectory. A child's eyes went wide with wonder as they observed the world around them. The ground shifted from shining rainbowed salt to sand, to dark, tightly packed dirt, where it became covered with a patchwork of colourful mosses, which gave way to a crystalline field of tiny ferns and lichen. Before becoming plush and verdant with the crystalline foliage of slightly larger plants which gleamed in the moonlight. Now, as the party looked ahead, the once distant spire was a massive, looming structure which stretched up, before disappearing into the sky. Large, looping, woody structures began to rise from the ground. They looked like leafless trees, except for the fact that they inevitably grew back into the ground and were brightly colored, as if they were glowing in the dark. To Sasha, these looked like massive crystalline tree roots. Some structures even had what appeared to be moss and lichen growing to carpet them. A fair number of the structures simply presented a tripping hazard, while others were so massive that the entire party could pass under without touching. The tangled growth of foliage seemed to close in around the group as they moved. The sensation of being watched was back. The feeling was so strong that Sasha curled back, huddling into the dragon's wings for some form of protection. A voice drifted on the wind, making Sasha shudder. The child peered around in suspicion. None of the adults seemed to hear the voice.
Alexis,
the voice whispered once again. The unnerved child looked around with wide, fearful eyes. They glanced from the dragon to the phoenix. They had stopped, as if frozen in time. Neither was so much as blinking as the word was once again whispered on the wind, causing the child to look around frantically. For the child, Sasha was a chosen name. They picked it on the spot to tell the dragon. This was not uncommon for runaways, especially runaway nutritors. What was uncommon was hearing a name they had not spoken aloud in almost a year being whispered on the wind. Usually, if one member of your group heard a sound, everybody heard it. Yet it seemed apparent by the statuesque state of the party that Sasha alone was even aware of what was happening.
Up here, child.
The voice called softly, causing the child to look directly up at the sky. The moon was no longer swirling with the colors of the rainbow. It now had an opaque mist obscuring it, and underneath was a face, the narrow, predatory eyes of which were fixed on the youngster.
Alexis,
the low voice rasped.
We meet again.
Again?
A cold sense of dread filled the child's belly. The eyes on the moon narrowed, and a mouth appeared, the corners of which were pulled down into a frown. It had a sinister countenance, which made Sasha want to shiver. It took no small amount of effort to contain the near involuntary response. Sasha stared at the face on the moon, unaware of the tendrils of shadow which were enveloping them. Their only clue to the seriousness of their current predicament was the sense of dread which filled them so intensely that they nearly screamed. Frozen spot, paralyzed by terror, Sasha focused on their breathing. Their instincts clashed within them, keeping them rooted in spot. A large part of their gut instinct urged them to try to appear bigger and stronger than they currently felt, to do something, anything, to draw the attention of the adults.
Yelling might rouse them,
the child thought. They opened their mouth, and their tongues stitched. The sudden sensation of sand filling their mouth and throat prevented them from breathing. Wide, fearful eyes stared up at the moon as small, bluntly fingered hands raked and scratched at their flesh. Grasping for the invisible force which now seemed to have them held, fixed in spot by their neck. A gust of wind whipped up, filling the air with the crisp rattle of leaves. Sasha tried to look around. They were able to discern that their companions were gone. The force around their throat did not allow them time to truly register their surroundings before it started pulling them forward. Unable to breathe, the child stuck their hands out in front of them as if it would somehow help with their current situation. Wide, terror-filled eyes looked forwards, blinking at the wind which buffered in their face as their body careened through the air. Whatever had a hold of the little star was pulling them at dizzying speeds straight towards the central spire which loomed in the distance. Sasha's head began to swim and spin as they looked down. They were no longer a small child riding astride a dragon. They were an adolescent, flying through the air on a one-way collision course with the rapidly approaching spire. The sense of dread which filled Sasha as the tower began to warp from a rainbow column into a black, foreboding cube made them begin to thrash against the unseen force holding them captive. Their visions swam black as their heads spun, yet they didn't give up. Thrashing did little good. They could do little more than hang like a rag doll and brace for impact as the cube approached at speeds faster than most modern cars were capable of reaching. The shadow of the cube loomed close, and Sasha braced for an impact which never came. They opened their eyes and blinked as they sunk into the foamy, cloud-like surface of the cube. Their vision went dark, and the urge to panic filled the little star anew.
Daywen.
A deep voice rolled like thunder in the darkness.
Come to me.
Daywen was a magical name that Sasha received during their official adoption ceremony. It meant Princess of Dark Beauty in an Elder Nalkulian dialect. Very few creatures in all of existence knew the name. This voice sounded like none of them. There was something in the low, thundering tones which filled Sasha with panic. Their instincts screamed as their body filled with the urge to run. Despite their best efforts, their legs betrayed them, and instead obeyed the voice as their body marched forward.
No, no!
Sasha screamed internally at their traitorous body, but they continued to march forward. Looking ahead did nothing to ease the fear which was paralyzing their arms at their sides. Ahead, in the darkness, two glowing eyes whirled. The closer Sasha drew, the more they became like two tiny galaxies fixed in space inside of the same, now looming shadow. Despite their best efforts, the little star could no longer control the trembling of their body.
At last,
the low voice rumbled from all around.
I see you.
Tendrils of darkness reached towards Sasha. Smog like columns of corruption, darker than the void like space, reached out and began to gently caress their face. An icy sensation spread throughout the little star as the tendril of darkness took the shape of a hand.
Oh, yes.
The shadowy hand caressed Sasha's face. Finger-like tendrils traced from their cheek to their lips.
You will be mine.
The shadow promised, looming over Sasha's much smaller form.
And together we will be unstoppable.
Cold dread turned to terror, and Sasha screamed, shattering the dream.
Tales from Ilgraya, the Once and Future Crown, is a work of fiction by KS Aiton. No part may be used or redistributed outside of critical review without owner permission. Want more? Be sure to smash that subscribe button and head on over to TikTok or our website for all things Ilgraya. Thank you for your support. Bye.